It's not often that someone comes into the forest, but it does happen. Those that do never leave the same, if they leave at all. The forest can be a dangerous place. I speak to all who enter, whispering promise with oaken tongues, singing their desires to them, and beckoning them with gnarled branches. I beg them to stay just a bit longer, to wander just a bit farther, to look just a bit deeper. Those who enter the forest often listen to me, and the flowers sing their bodies into twisted shapes and their minds into sharp thorns. I suppose it wasn't always like this. They say the forest used to be a welcoming place, without the cloying sense of something just a bit out of place and the sinister whispers of the wind speaking to the leaves. Mothers would gather berries, mushrooms, and herbs for their dinners, and the hunters would bring back a share of the bountiful game sheltered beneath the old trees. Before too long, though, something shifted in the forest. First in the grass, and then the flowers and seeds, and then up and up all the way to the huge redwoods and ancient pines deeper in the forest. People, being their usual unobservant selves, didn't notice that I had moved in. The mothers gathering berries and mushrooms and herbs saw the leaves getting darker. The mushrooms' caps curl up at the edges, and the berries grew sour and pale. The hunters began to bring back game that was a little too big, with just a few too many eyes or wings or teeth. They spoke in hushed voices to each other, telling stories of the huge, shadowy things lurking just in the corner of their sight, or the feeling of hungry eyes on their backs, of the nausea that worked at their guts as they scrounged each scrap of food for their meals. However, they didn't start to avoid the forest until they started to hear my singing. It was a sweet, melancholy tune, almost like something I would croon to my child as he drifted to sleep, but it struck unease into any that heard it. I sang not of fairy tales and clouds, but of bones and blood and so many teeth, flashing and snapping in the darkness. That was what the sane people heard. If one so happened to have a few cogs knocked loose from their curious clock inside the brain, then my song was a little different. They heard their wishes and hopes sung to them, and I lured them deeper into the shade. Once these people heeded the call, their bodies were the first to change. Some grew long limbs, longer than those of the giant moose and elk in the meadows. Some grew sharp teeth, sharper than those of the wolves in the underbrush. Some grew jagged claws, more deadly than those of the snow leopards in the mountains. The most difficult shift belonged to those that lost their corporeal forms altogether, twisting into the shadow creatures the hunters had seen watching them. Their hungry eyes turned to the backs of those they once knew. The minds of these people began to morph soon after. They'd lose the tame inhibitions of their human selves, but retained a cold intelligence. They became monsters in their own right, but much more sinister than anything any mortal could dream up. Hunters became hunted, and humans didn't return home. Of course, it's only right that they transform in these ways. I'm the one who molded their new forms, after all. They are my children. My song saves them from the life of misery they lived in the small, mortal village. They were chained down there, longing for a life beyond routine, and I rescued them. They are free now, to do whatever they please. They eat when they are hungry, they sleep when they are tired, and they hunt when they are bored, all thanks to their mother. I taught them my song, and their voices whisper among the mountains, sweet, Syrupy echoes lure their brothers and sisters from the villages. The sound lulls the forest to sleep each night and wakes it every morning. We will stay here within the forest. We are the forest.